We are going to dive into the world of angles today. So what I need from you is to get your math journal. That's the journal that has the grid paper on the inside, because we are going to take some notes before we get really deep into angles. So please grab your math journal right now. Here we are, the Classifying Angles notes. Classifying angles is what we're going over today. Classifying means putting things into categories, figuring out what something is called and why it is called that name. That's classifying something, and we're doing that with angles. Our essential question today is, how are different ideas in geometry connected? Now, Mr. Hopkins did a geometry video last week about points, lines, rays, perpendicular lines, parallel lines, and intersecting lines. Those will come in handy when we learn about angles. Our first part of the notes is, what is it? What's an angle? Well, an angle is two rays with the same endpoint. So remember, a ray is you have an endpoint, and then you have a line coming out of that endpoint that goes on forever. So an angle is two of those, two rays that join at the same endpoint. This is what an angle looks like. You have an endpoint and you have a ray coming out this way and another ray coming out this way. It's also okay to have the angle flipped the other way. You can have the endpoint here and the rays going out to the left. Angles look very different depending on how you draw the angle. So you'll see lots of different angles as we go through this lesson. The next thing to talk about is how they are measured. Angles are measured in turns and degrees. We'll be looking at turns first, and then I'll be talking to you about degrees. The most common way you'll see an angle measured is in degrees, but we use turns in 4th grade to start. So, turns are sections of a full circle. So a way that you'll see the angle measured when I'm talking about turns is a quarter turn. So it's a quarter of a circle, as if you have a cookie and you cut 1/4 out of it. Think about fractions. A half turn, that means half of it is cut, right? So the angle is showing half of the circle. And then greater or less than a quarter turn. So those are the terms that you'll hear us use in 4th grade, but more likely you'll be hearing degrees later. We'll dip more into the turns later on. Degrees. You'll see this a lot more commonly as angles measured in degrees, and you'll be learning how to actually measure angles using degrees too. So 360 degrees is a full circle. That's why if you hear people say if you do a front flip or a back flip, it's 360 degrees because you're going all the way around. It's a full circle. Angles are all parts of a 360 degree circle. Now, there's this little circle above the number. That's called a degree. So the little tiny circle at the top means degree. Now that we've talked about what an angle is and how they might be measured, let's actually dive into the measuring part a little bit. I'm going to show you what turns actually are based on angles and what degrees are as shown in angle measurements. So here we have examples. Turns are the first thing I want to talk about. These are all examples of what turns look like when we're talking about angles. So when I say, what's an angle with 1/4 turn? That looks like this. So this black angle is 1/4 turn. If I was to color it in, notice it takes up 1/4 or 1/4 of the circle because that angle is a 1/4 turn angle. This angle is a 1/2 turn angle. So you can color it in this way or this way, it doesn't matter, but you'll notice that is literally half of the circle. That's why it's called a half turn. When I say, what's an angle that's less than a 1/4 turn or less than a 1/4 turn, it looks like this. It's not exactly a 1/4 turn. Notice this is smaller than this one. So less than a 1/4 turn would look like this. And lastly, something I might reference is greater than a quarter turn. It might look like this, greater than a quarter turn. So it takes up more than a quarter, but notice it's less than a half. It's less than a half. Okay, that's greater than a quarter turn. So again, a turn is part of a circle. Think of angles as just pieces of a full circle. So that's something you can really make an image out of when you're thinking about angles. Oh, okay, it's just part of a circle. Now I want to talk to you about degrees and how those work with angles. So for degrees, the first example I have is a straight line. A straight line, when we're talking about degrees, is 180 degrees. That is half of a circle or a half turn like this. 180 degrees is a straight line. Other angles we have are a right angle and an acute angle. A right angle is 90 degrees. The right angle is the same thing as a quarter turn. Up here, you'll notice the black area here looks the same as this angle right here. 90 degrees makes a right angle. An acute angle is anything less than 90 degrees. So that would be less than a quarter turn, is the same thing as an acute angle. What we like to do to remember acute angles is they're small, so we say it's acute angle. It's acute, you know, because it's cute. Okay, so it's less than 90 degrees is an acute angle. The last one we have is an obtuse angle. Obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. So in this case, I drew a 125 degree angle. That's greater than 90 degrees. And that would be greater than a quarter turn. Notice these are very similar here. So an obtuse angle is really big. So the way we say obtuse to remember that it's greater than 90 degrees is we go obtuse. Make it nice and deep, like it's a really big thing. Obtuse. All right. Remember, a circle is 360 degrees. Angles are degrees taken from a full circle. So really, when we think about that, it's just like turns. Angles are just parts of a circle. They're just turns in a circle because you're turning it to make an angle. Degrees are taken from a circle as well. 360 degrees is one full circle. So 90 degrees is just taking 90 degrees out of that circle. That's where the degrees come from, is the circle. Let's now take a look at specifically these types of angles on the slideshow you'll use for your assignment. This slideshow is going to help you complete your assignment about classifying angles. I will go over your assignment with you in a few minutes as soon as I go through this slideshow. So, classifying angles. Which is which? How do I know? Well, to start off, a line is a 180 degree angle. So if I'm looking at a line, this angle is opened to 180 degrees. So it still counts as an angle. This means it is a half turn. So if you're measure it in turns, it would be a half turn because it opens up to half of the circle. And then in degrees, it's 180 degrees because it's half of the 360 degrees of a circle. The next one we're going to take a look at is a right angle. A right angle is a 90 degree angle. This means it is a quarter turn of a circle. So 90 degrees is 1/4 of 360 degrees. That's why it is a quarter turn. It is 1/4 of 360 degrees. That makes it a 90 degree angle. Right angles are pretty easy to remember because they're everywhere. The corner of your room is a right angle. The corner of your computer is a right angle. They're all over the place. Anything that has a corner is a right angle. The next angle is an acute angle. Remember, it's acute angle. Acute angle. It's just so adorable. So an acute angle is any angle that measures less than 90 degrees. So in my example, I drew a 45-degree angle. Now, in our turns, you would say that it is less than a quarter turn. We don't get super specific about exactly how much of the circle it takes up in turns. We just say it's less than a quarter turn. A quarter turn would be a right angle here. So remember, an acute angle is less than that. It's less than a right angle. All right, the very last angle we're looking at is an obtuse angle. And we say obtuse because it's a large angle, so it's a really deep sound. Obtuse. In my example, I drew a 125-degree angle because an obtuse angle is any angle that measures more than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. The reason that I put the less than 180 degrees is because, again, 180 degrees is a straight line. So it wouldn't be obtuse anymore. It would just be a line. That's why my example is 125 degrees. Also, in turns, this means it is greater than a quarter turn, but less than a half turn. So if I was actually going to show you on the circle, a quarter turn would be about this much, and a half turn would be about this much of the circle. So you can see it's right in the middle of those two. That means it's greater than a quarter turn, but less than a half turn. Your assignment is going to be all about these angles. So this slideshow called Classifying Angles is really going to be a big help for you. It will be linked into your assignments page so that you can access it at any time to help you with your assignment. This is your Classifying Angles assignment. It says, fill in the blank squares in the table below. So that means these squares here and all of these blank squares. Click and drag the angle pictures into the correct example squares. So these are the angle pictures. You would click one and drag one into the squares when you figure out which one matches, which example and which vocabulary word. And type in any other answers. Remember to complete the questions below the table too. So below the table, there's some questions. All right, so I'm going to do one of these with you because there are 3 blank squares here and I want to help you out with this. So I'm going to drag one of these angles down because that's actually where it belongs. So I'm going to drag one of these pictures. To drag a picture, I click on the picture and then I drag it. You can see the blue cursor, that's where it's going to go. I'm dragging it to the area that it belongs. This picture actually belongs in this spot. This is a clue for the other 2 blank squares here. I can start figuring out this assignment. So if the vocabulary word is obtuse angle, I would have to choose an example from up here that is an obtuse angle. So I'd click on the obtuse angle and drag it down. The degrees for an obtuse angle are greater than 90 degrees, so that's what it says right here. So then for this one, it says that the degrees are 180 degrees. So you have to think, all right, which one of these angles is 180 degrees? You would drag that one here, and then you would type the name of that angle over here. And again, for this one, you do a similar thing, acute angle. Which one is an acute angle? You drag it down, and then you'd write how many degrees an acute angle has. And again, you can use that slideshow that I went over with you to help you if you need it. So that's how the table works. The questions below the table are about turns. So I'm going to do one of them with you as an example. Which of the angles below measures 1/4 turn? Delete all other answer choices. So I need to find the angle that is 1/4 turn. It's actually this one. So I'm going to delete the other answer choices. So to delete it, I would click and press delete. Things are going to move around. That's okay. All right, and then I click and delete, click and delete. And then I would leave my page like this. This is what your page should look like after you have your answer. You do 2, 3, and 4 in the same way. You delete all the other answer choices except for the correct one. So you choose the one that's correct and delete the other ones. Hopefully you'll be able to do it no problem because you are a bunch of smarty falcons. All right, this is it. You've got this. Find your assignment on Google Classroom.